DraftKings taking action on Strickland versus Paulo Costa. Who do you think they've got as the favorite? And I want to ask you in this regard, it's a co-main event. Extremely relevant. Like, there's a number of matches that if DraftKings was setting a line, would change literally the favorite. The suggested outcome would change if it was 5 rounds versus 3. I'm going to tell you again. Co-main event, scheduled for 3 rounds. Who do you think the favorite? Strickland and Paulo Costa. And the answer to that is not only Strickland heavily. 2-1 favorite would be pretty strong. He's a little better than that. Oh, by the way, always has been. That is where that line started. Now, both guys are coming off of a loss. Strickland's was in January. It was for his championship. Big deal. Like, historically speaking, when you have guys coming back off of losses where there was stakes were so big, such as a world championship, it's a very big deal how they will generally respond. And in Strickland's case, I think a lot of us thought the stakes were going to be the exact same, in that he would be fighting for that very championship. He would be getting a rematch against Strickland. So then you go to Paulo Costa. Now, anywhere Paulo goes, drama follows him. Can we agree, like, he's really good at social media. He's really good at bringing attention. But one thing with Paulo Costa is there's so many things to consider prior to the fight. Such as, is he going to make weight? I mean, just to start with that, everybody in the world, including me, is trying to make him a 205-pounder. But he doesn't want to be a 205-pounder. He wants to stay at 185 pounds. And one of the reasons I bring this back and forth up is because when I look at that line at DraftKings, I feel as though this fight is really going under the radar. I don't know that I've seen a co-main event with as little attention as this one's had in a meaningful period of time. Not to mention, guys, I think it's a number 1 contenders match. At least for Strickland. Paulo Costa can make the argument anytime he wants. He's much like Robert Whittaker. Like, it doesn't overly matter what happened in your last fight or even your last 3 fights. The argument can be made off of 1 win, boom, that's the guy. Particularly when you look at the level of competition that Paulo Costa faces. He only takes on the best guys. And Strickland was all upset at one point that he wasn't given the nod and he wasn't given the Dricus fight. I mean, to the point one time he came out and even spoke about it publicly, and he never does that. But it was bothering him that much. And then when I stand back and I look at the board and I look at all the pieces, I see that, I identify and go, okay, that's probably a number 1 contenders match. But I can't do any better than that. I can't do any better than to use the word probably. In fact, one of the reasons that I can't come in with a stronger word than probably is we don't have Izzy versus Dricus done. At least not officially and announced. Then you're going to have Chimaev take on Whittaker. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at that. But before you name that a number 1 contenders match, it does depend on who the winner of the not yet announced fight between Duplessis and Adesanya is, right? Like, you start to see where this gets interesting. And if you're the guys over at DraftKings, let me ask you a question. If you're going to take money and you've got to be profitable and you're going to make a case to the world for Paulo Costa, then let me ask you a simple question. How does Paulo Costa beat him? The circle of people that I talk to that pick Paulo think he's going to knock him out. That is the number 1 thing that I hear within my bubble. Well, does the likelihood of a knockout increase or decrease when a feature match like this goes from a potential 5 rounds down to 3? Like, that sprint becomes less important in your mind, or it becomes more important? Vitor Belfort, one of the greats ever. But there was a stat on Vitor at one time. This is many years ago. Matt Lindland was getting ready to fight him. I was in Matt's corner, so I was really studying these numbers on Vitor. So this is a period of time ago. But there was a stat on Vitor, who had been world champion, who was one of the great stars, who Jeff Blatnick, rest his soul, stated has no known weaknesses. But there was a stat on Vitor that would blow your mind. It was a long time ago, but it was either Vitor had never won a fight that went the distance, or Vitor had only won 1 fight that went the distance. But then you can even back it up from that, right? And this was a world champion. You can even back it up from that, which was, it was either Vitor had only won 1 fight beyond the 2nd round, or Vitor had never won a fight that went out of the second round. It was something very interesting, but it lended to the idea of the sprint and the power and the threat that Vitor offered early. And I mention that because so many people that I speak to see that same thing within Paulo Costa. And Strickland is one of those guys who will give you an opportunity. Like if you think standing up against Strickland is your best bet and therefore Strickland's probably going to come in and rest you, he's not. Strickland will not tailor his offense around yours. Strickland will not tailor what he needs to do tactically based on what you're going to do. For example, Alex Pereira, great stand-up fighter. Strickland's ranked much higher. Strickland's got a way to go, but he's got to get a hold of him. He's got to drag him down. What we know about Pierre is largely reputation. We hadn't quite seen it yet, but we're told he's very good on his feet. That did not change one moment of Sean Strickland's experience with Alex Pereira. And then you can even fast forward. You could chalk it up to, okay, the lessons that Strickland learned, but now he's in there with Izzy. But it's the same deal. Sean Strickland believed in himself, and he did not tailor or change his tactics offensively due to his opponents. And that has to be considered. Like if you're going over to DraftKings and you're placing a bet and you're sitting there like most matches and you're trying to play through in your mind, how's this match going to go? When it comes down to Sean Strickland, you already have your answer. Like there's not a scenario where he's going to go out and just tackle the other guy, or where he's even going to go out and try to just tackle the other guy. That's before you get into the X's and O's that Paulo Costa is a very hard guy to take down and or keep down. Like we don't have to get that far. If I'm asking you to go to DraftKings and to make your pick, what I'm largely asking you, what 90% of the question that I just asked you is, who do you think can win a kickboxing match between Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa? Whatever your answer is to that question, you're going to have the same answer when I ask you who's going to win an MMA fight between Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. DraftKings has Strickland as a little better than 2-1. That's a big compliment to Sean Strickland. That's a big compliment to a guy that's coming in off of a defeat, who was upset that he wasn't getting a title shot. You're getting him in there in the first place without even guaranteeing this is a number one contendership. It's an interesting thing, like the psychology that comes with Strickland, comes with coming off of a defeat, or comes for being a main event and having to move down a notch with such a dangerous opponent as Paulo Costa. And I feel with the drama of the weigh-in alone looming, like you talk about his fight week, well, it's also weigh-in week, and there seems to be no real dialogue of any suggestion that Paulo Costa is going to struggle making weight. And it's just everything feels a little bit off. And whenever something feels a little bit off, by the way, it ups the stakes. And I would be very curiously, psychologically, between these two guys, both coming off a loss, knowing everything that this means, possible number one contendership that has yet to be called as such, DraftKings says Strickland is 2 times more likely to beat Paulo Costa than the other way around. Do you agree?